All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here. Time to start the show. Start the music. It's Broncos for breakfast today. I got one more going. There we go. Welcome in. It is time for an episode of Broncos for breakfast. I'm Nick Kendell and joined by Scott Kennedy, as always. How you doing, Scott? Scott, I learned something yesterday. You always say it sounds like the Muppets show. I did not know that the Sesame Street puppets were considered Muppets as well.
I don't know the difference.
Okay, they're made by the same Jim Henson or whoever it is, but I just always thought it was the Sesame Street puppets are Muppets. Anything made by Henson is a Muppet. So there you go. It was on my mind today as I kind of start the show.
Okay. Yeah, it was like, well, what's the difference between a Muppet and a puppet?
They have to be made by Jim Henson in the style that he does. So
kind of like I give George Lucas a dime every time I say Android.
Yes.
Yep. Those aren't robots. Those are droids.
Blast them. Well, welcome in, everybody. We're way off the rails right away. Sorry about making the stream a little bit late. Typically, I start warming up the bottle pump and blah, 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 and come down here. And as soon as I laid the little guy down, he said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So couldn't leave him, and I fed him right away. So 5 minutes before, hey, man, we're doing the best we can. Let's say hello to some other people in here doing the best they can. We got Conga saying, I don't think it takes a genius to come up to this conclusion. It is, I agree with you. The conclusion is not shocking, but I think the details of how they got there and what the actual formula says is interesting more than saying the Broncos have a bottom 3 to 5 roster in the NFL right now. And I know, Scott, we talked about it last year. You don't love exactly the process, the formula here. For them,
it's more of a ranking, which is fine, than a grade. It's different things because most of his grades are completely linear. The number 1 gets 4.0, the number 2 gets 3.9, the number 3 gets 3.8. There's no duplicates, there's no ties, and it's basically a ranking, which is fine. It's just not quite what it's billed as. He's put in a ton of work. Don't get me wrong. Respect the work. But for the most part, it is a ranking. And when it comes out at the end, the Broncos are ranked 30 out of 32.
Yeah, not great. I think if I was doing it just from a process perspective, I'd make it out of 100, and I would have duplicates on there just to have a little bit more specificity to the grade. And obviously, it's subjective as well. It's just how he's grading each positional group. You can't be an expert on every team. Heck, it's hard enough to do it for one team. But I do think it gives you a good idea of the perception of the team. And I think you look back also at Mike Clay. Obviously, there's always shocking teams that come out. I mean, Vegas gets it wrong, and Vegas wasn't built on bad bets. But I think you can look back at the historical hit rate he has on this, and he does a pretty good job overall. So unfortunately, probably a harbinger of bad things to come for the Broncos roster talent. The one thing I will add, and I think I can say the same thing about the team last year, that was a bottom 10 roster team last season, maybe even bottom 7 in terms of the talent on the overall team, in my opinion. And you still finished with the 12th pick. Why? Coaching does matter, and the Broncos have really good, competent coaching. The other aspect of this is he grades the offense, he grades the defense. I do not believe he grades the special teams. Yeah, no special teams. Broncos had their best special teams since a decade last year, and that made a difference. They had pretty good starting field position. Mims was one of the best. I mean, you had a Pro Bowl returner out there. It was pretty. Lutz, after that first game, really kind of settled down. The gunning teams, the core 4, really good for the Broncos last season. So doesn't capture that. So maybe they are the 30th worst in offense and defense. But when you include coaching, when you include special teams, maybe they're only the 25th worst team in the NFL. We'll see, though. We got to play the games, and we still have the draft to go right now.
32 minus 12, basically. You had the 12th pick, 32 teams. That puts you, 20th, 21st in record last year. And there's some ties. There are ties in records. There aren't any in this grading system. So, we talked about it last year, looking at the defense. How does it get better? It's like they're really undermanned on the defensive side of the ball. And frankly, you've gone backwards when it comes to the talent because this is going to be a rebuilding season. We said, let's watch what happens in free agency and let's see what the signals are from the Denver Broncos on what their intentions are for 2024. If they are adding a free agent here or there and restructuring their key players, then and the thing is, Nick, I feel like they haven't quite gone all in on that, Nick. I
Yeah.
think, Judy and Simmons and Russell Wilson. We knew Russell Wilson was a gimme. That was a for sure. But you could have brought Simmons back. You could have brought Judy back. And if you're not going to, what are Sutton and Bowles still doing here?
I think the argument for Sutton and Bowles is that they are still valuable pieces and the market has not dictated the return that would make it palatable to move on from them.
What was your return on Justin Simmons?
Nothing. But
Exactly. So
he's a
that's kind of my
safety.
point. That's kind of my point on that. But
But he's a safety. He's older and he doesn't play a premium position, which I mean, did you see what Judy got paid as soon for what he's done? I mean, there's a positional
that's
value.
unbelievable. That
It
that,
is
that is actually shocking to me. And we talked a little bit about it yesterday, Nick, on my channel about the idea of getting second contract wide receivers. To me, has become asinine. Just nuts. You're paying. You were thrilled to be able to get a return and get somebody just to pick up $13 million of Jerry Judy's salary, and they turn around and paid him 20.
Hmm.
Wow. 2
Yeah.
years, $20 million guaranteed. I mean, each year. So 2
Yeah.
years, $40 million guaranteed for Jerry Judy. That's bonkers. $25 million for 2 years guaranteed for Calvin Ridley. I'm drafting receivers now, man. I'm drafting probably 2 every freaking draft.
Yeah, it is pretty nuts to see that. And it's one of those things where we talk about it on here a lot. Positional value can be driven by scarcity. You see that with difference making defensive tackles. You see that with offensive tackles a lot, but it also can be driven by impact. And while there are wide receivers coming in every year, you look across the league and teams need playmakers, difference makers on the outside. And even a number 2 or a good number 3 is getting paid now. And that's partially I think the hyper fixation on positional value. Maybe we've jumped shark on that to an extent. We'll see. But also, it's just the value, the impact they make on the field still matters. Even if there are a lot of them, you need multiple, and if you don't have them, it's pretty hard to have a functional, explosive offense. So my point being there, Scott, is that it's really the positional value that dictates that. The safeties this year. I mean, Justin Simmons still looking for a home. I think if Bowles or Sutton were on the market, they would be snapped up like that because of the positions they play. And also the other point I want to say is, why are they still here? You're trying to set yourself up where if you do take a rookie quarterback, you're not coming to an absolutely barren wasteland of an offense. I think the defense is pretty damn terrible personnel wise, but the offense, you have a left tackle, you have a go-to wide receiver. If you bring in a rookie quarterback and you don't have those guys, it's going to be hard for them. I think right now you have at least the semblance of a competent offense structure-wise that if you bring a rookie quarterback, they can be okay.
This was, a discussion we had yesterday about the draft a guy and sit him like an automatic answer. And I took umbrage with that. I don't like the one size fits all applications, but we've also talked about a rookie quarterback on a bad team. You can shell shock him.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did that, Nick, and you took a rookie quarterback, you probably wouldn't play him until you felt like he could get back there without getting the absolute hell beat out of him, where he's damaged goods. So
Hard to do. Hard to do.
so if you were to move on from Bowles and Sutton, et cetera, and you took a rookie quarterback, you might not see him play a whole lot. And again, it was Stidham and, one of the conversations we've had, and I don't really understand why, because it's good talking points. That's why. The Broncos not being in on a quarterback, not doing this, not exploring free agency, not going after these guys. They got their guy. They did that last year.
Mm-hmm.
If Jarrett Stidham had been signed this year instead of last year, people would have said, oh, there's their bridge quarterback. There's the veteran bridge who's been in the league a little bit of time, has some starts under his belt. He's the placeholder.
Yeah.
Where did Jarrett Stidham go? Why has that disappeared?
I think that because he's not new, and we kind of saw a little bit last season, it was overall underwhelming. The 2 games he had, it was fine.
That
I
speaks
also
to the
think the
quarterback
Broncos.
market in general in free agency, Nick.
I was just going to make that point. This season, with the explosion of the cap, the 2 areas that really saw massive payouts because of the added cap dollars were the guard market, interior offensive line, specifically guard, and backup quarterbacks. I mean, Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold, these guys, 8 million, 10 million. Broncos probably went in thinking we could pay 4 to 6 and bring them in, and their market almost doubled for these kind of guys. So then you're like, whoa, okay, we did not allocate the budget for that. we like Stidham enough where we don't want to pay somebody else. We'll see what happens with Ryan Tannehill. There has been a little bit of smoke between the Broncos and Ryan Tannehill. I think they're far apart financially, but let's say the draft doesn't work out in a way where they get a first-round quarterback, then you could see them circle back around after the draft and bring in a Tannehill if they wanted to add at least a little bit of competition, other options to the room along with Jarrett Stidham. At that point, I probably would just not pay and roll with Stidham because you're probably going to be, how much does Tannehill change the formula here? We'll talk about here with the Broncos, not by much. What do you go from the 30th best roster to maybe the 28th, 27th? But that's just me. I'm ready to embrace the suck, as they say, for 2024.
Jeremy Sean says, morning, boys. The roster isn't great, but it also isn't as bad as people think. Some of the overrated guys have been shipped and the Peyton guys have moved in. I want to get to Chris, and then I want to come back to this. I want to run through an exercise. I'm going to run through the projected starters on our lads, and you're going to give three scores, plus, minus, even. As far as, are they a minus NFL guy? Are, let's think of WAR, wins against replacement. How many wins is this guy worth against an average NFL player? Is he negative, neutral, or positive? We won't add them up. It'll just be 3 scores. And let's see how many times we say neutral or positive as we go down it. So I want to do that, Jeremy, because you say it's not as bad as people think. We did that last year on the defense, and we came up with like 2 positives. It was, and one of those guys is gone. Mm-hmm. So it's the defense is undermanned. We were preaching that last year. But I want to get to Chris, and we'll come back on that, Jeremy, and just see how bad is it. Coach Chris says, good morning. Appreciate the super chat, breaking the ice for us over there on YouTube. Chris says, good morning. I don't care what the supposed experts say about our roster. If the team exceeds expectations, then the sky's the limit. This team could mirror the results of last year without the salary. Love the haters. Yeah, embrace the hate. Let them hate. So, you know what, the ceiling on this, I said last year that I thought this team could improve on their 8-9 record. Is that where it ended up finishing? Wasn't 7-10? It was 8-9.
8-9. It was 8-9.
8-9 record. I thought they could improve on that. And frankly, did you make an improvement on safety? Pro Football Focus thinks you did. Is Marvin Mims an improvement on Jerry Jeudy? Maybe. Not yet, but maybe. You still need help at wide receiver. Is Jarrett Stidham an improvement on Russell Wilson? Maybe. Not yet. For all the hemming and hawing, Pittsburgh Steelers would do backflips if Russell Wilson has the same season for the Steelers that he did for the Broncos last year. That's how atrocious their quarterback play was last year. They'd be thrilled with 30 touchdowns against 11 turnovers. That's almost triple their production at the quarterback last year. Triple. Mm-hmm. They'd love it. So there's no guarantees those guys are improvements. But again, there's also no for sure's. Oh my God, you lost a guy. You lost a Devontae Adams. You didn't lose Pat Surtain. And even Garrett Bowles to that point. I think, not to give it away, but when we get to Garrett Bowles, I'm going to say neutral. I think he's about average in the NFL. He might be slightly above, but you factor in all the left tackles, 32. I think he's about average. So we'll get to those. So yes, this team isn't done yet. The draft's going to be incredibly important for this team, Nick.
Yeah. You don't have many picks for difference makers, though. I mean, the draft perspective for me is about the long-term health of the roster. So the guys you're talking about, all those day 3 picks that you have this year, God, you hope 50% hit, and that can be contributors towards the back end. But we're talking more so 2026, 2027, where I am hoping to get value from those guys, not 2024. That would just be lucky, honestly, if you got that. Let's be real. So we can run through that if you want, Scott. I think I'll probably disagree with you on some of it. I wish I was
already disagree on Bowles. That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. I want to take care of some business first.
Yeah.
Our supporters coming in, like Coach coming in for the first time, it sounds like. He says, big fan of Broncos for breakfast, long-time listener. Well, welcome in. This is probably within a couple of weeks of 3 full years. I think we started either end of March or beginning of April of 22, 23, 24. I lose count when I start counting numbers. In 21. So Nick and I have been doing this almost 3 years together.
Man.
Y'all's dynamic is my favorite. Well, thank you, and appreciate the y'all in there for a redneck like me. Thank you for your time and effort, adding joy into our mornings. Well, we have a good time doing this. And like I've said a bunch of times, I appreciate Broncos country giving me a chance and embracing me. And Nick has been awesome. Love doing this with him. We're together. I talk with him probably more than I talk with any family member. So appreciate y'all being here. Thank you, Coach. Mark Schrader's been an OG with us from the very beginning too.
God bless.
Mark, here's to you. Got my Lion coffee, more roar in every pour. Cheers, Mark. Appreciate the support. And Lawrence coming in and says, wake up, Broncos country. We got Scott and Nick telling it like it is. Lawrence, I don't always like that phrase because that means you're right. I don't know that I'm right. I call it like I see it. I don't necessarily tell it like it is. Those are two different things. I'll be honest. Doesn't mean I'm right, but I'll be honest about it. So I appreciate you, Lawrence. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I always say on here, we're going to get things wrong. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. We're trying to project and prognosticate. And just in general, when you're talking about the human element there, you're going to get things wrong. It's the people who are present themselves as never wrong and infallible. And that if you question them or poke against them, how dare you? I know everything. Those are the ones you want to watch out for. I don't know if you're a Pirates of the Caribbean fan, Scott, but it's like the scene with Captain Jack Sparrow, and he's like, it's the honest ones you want to watch out for, because the honest ones, you never know they're going to do something incredibly stupid. Like the dishonest ones, they're going to be dishonest. So we're real with you. We're going to get things wrong. That's okay. But if you present yourself that I'm never wrong, I'm infallible, red flags, because there's no way.
I'm always afraid I repeat. We get a lot of repeat listeners. A lot of the Broncos family here, and I was like, I know y'all have heard this before, but I don't want to repeat myself a zillion times, but I do. Because, it's an honest take. They say if you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. Well, that happens a lot. So appreciate y'all. And then Gilbilly coming in.
New name.
We got y'all. We got Gilbilly. It's my kind of show. Says, hey, guys, I've gone back and forth on all these guys, but I've settled on Nick's. The knock on his age is dumb, and his arm strength seems more than capable. Also, Chris Sims' analysis sold me. Frankly, I think a lot of people, and this isn't necessarily against Bo Nix. Bo Nix could be a very capable quarterback. I think what you're saying is correct. I'm not worried about his age. He could play 15 years in the NFL. Mm-hmm. His arm strength is adequate. He's got the enough factor to play in the NFL. But I think Broncos fans are coming to realize that that's going to be your best shot at a quarterback is Bo Nix or Michael Penix. The top four guys are pretty much out of reach. So you start talking yourself into, this is the guy I want. You might not necessarily want this guy first on your board, but he's probably going to be the best guy left on your board. And that doesn't necessarily mean he can't play. No. But I think a lot of Broncos fans are coming around to the idea because this is your best shot at a franchise quarterback, in my opinion.
It's the bar at the end of the night. You saw the blonde bombshell there, and she left with somebody else earlier. Then there's the Latina gal you liked there, and she left with another guy too. Okay, well, it's it's not last call yet, but we're approaching it. What are my options? The top of the roster guys you wanted, probably gone, at least in my opinion. But Bo Nix, I think that for me, I really lean into the traits and the tangibles, and he has enough arm talent for me. I love the physical profile. He's got good enough size. I think that 6'2", 6'3". He has huge hands, Scott. Which if you're playing outdoors, that matters. Experience, protects the football, good red zone decisions too. But the arm really lacks for me the ability to drive the football. Scott, I think the accuracy is a little bit overrated. I see a lot where guys are really having to adjust on quick throws against in air, which I don't love. I think that's going to limit Yak a little bit at an NFL level. It's just there's a difference between college accuracy and NFL accuracy. I think he does a really good job if he's trying to throw it between the hash marks / between the tackles. Everything from like the slot in, he can do pretty good. Outside, though, there's a little bit of having to reach outside the frame, which I do not love from the excellent accuracy quarterbacks. But the arm talent, he'd come in with the 20th, 25th best arm of the starters in the NFL. I would like a little bit more, but the power aspect, the running aspect, he's not Jalen Hurts out there, but I absolutely love the physical profile that he brings as a runner. He's tough. It's going to be hard to bring him down. There's issues, though, with things I just can't answer. The intelligence, the processing. We can try to surmise it, but let's be real, that Oregon offense, it's hard to do. It's like Justin Herbert. It's like, well, he's making these first reads all the time. Can he go through reads? Can he stand in the pocket? He wasn't asked to in the offense. Doesn't mean he can't. But to say that you'd be lying to yourself. It's a really hard projection. So how does Nick's do in those meetings? Do they really latch on to it? And the factor I've talked about on here a lot that really matters is the human element, the personality fit. Sean is an old school ball coach, and he is going to ride you. He is going to yell at you at some point in the meeting room or on the sideline. Are you somebody who can take that? Do you have the mental fortitude / personality where that is not going to disengage you and make you resentful? I mean, it's a different type of person. You have to take almost that military approach, I think, with old Bill Parcells' disciple coach and Sean Payton.
Yep. And
That's a big factor.
I have no doubt about that part of it, Nick, just
Yes,
because
yes.
I have no doubt about that part of it. He's gone through adversity, and his dad was a quarterback at a big time school. Depending on how big time you want to call Auburn, but when he was there, they went on a 20-game winning streak.
Yep.
Was part of it, and his dad was a high school football coach. So having a guy that played in the 90s means he had old school football coaches that were in their faces and grabbing guys by the face mask, et cetera, et cetera. His dad was a coach. I'm not worried about Bo Nix being coached hard and being able to take it at all.
But again, just back to Bo Nix, we have questions that we can't answer, and I'm not going to pretend to answer. And if the intangible factors, the intelligent factors are A pluses and they love the personality fit as well, absolutely take him at 12. There's enough there. Otherwise, it's not a Mac Jones conversation for me where it's like, he'd have to be Peyton freaking Manning as an intelligent player for me to be interested in Mac Jones in the first round, because the arm is so weak, because the athleticism is so low. It's not that. He's a more than adequate athlete. He's not a difference maker as an athlete, but he's a good athlete. And again, the arm talent, the ability to drive the football, I wish it was better. Can't do much about that. The one thing also I'll push against a little bit, Scott, is I do think the age matters. It's not so much the how long does he have left in the tank. It's how much has he already progressed to his maximizing the traits that he has. Mm-hmm. The snaps that you've had, what you've seen, how much mentally you've already grown. I do believe there's somewhat of you can continuously grow, but there's almost like a decay on that where it's like you kind of plateaued, and you can grow a little bit, but you've already, how to beat cover 3. You know what the simulated pressure is. You know what to do with protections up front. You've reached that. So how much more is there for Bo Nix from a growth perspective, not a longevity perspective? That's where the age comes in for me.
And the way I put it is, are you worried? Are you concerned about his arm strength that to develop? No, I think, his arm's as strong as it's going to get for the most part. I'm not worried about the traits. Do I like the traits? Okay. Everything else comes in. And again, we talk about, the data and when these guys are at their best, what year, this blah, blah, blah. Well, the guys that peak early come in early. They start earlier in their career. So the data ends up getting skewed in stuff like that. But Kevin says, didn't Bo Nix play with Alex Forsyth, the center that the Broncos drafted last year? Do you think Sean Payton will take that into consideration and possibly drafting Nix? I'm going to borrow one from Jeremy because I wasn't on when I saw this question before. And Jeremy said, you don't make a quarterback decision based on a 7th round center who hasn't played a snap. It's Alex Forsyth is worried about Alex Forsyth right now, trying to make this team, trying to be a starter, doing all those things. I don't think one has anything to do with the other. I'm not making a 1st round decision on my quarterback because of a 7th round center, unless that 7th round center has been he's been in my, system in my franchise for 10 years and he's a multi-time Pro Bowler. And then it's not a 7th round center. It's a veteran center that's been on your team. Yeah. Forsyth and Nix will have 0 to do with each other on that.
It might make a difference in terms of camp battle if you brought in Bo Nix and it's Luke Wattenberg versus Alex Forsyth. Well, if there's some familiarity there. The issue with me is that it was a really quick oriented shotgun based offense. Like the center exchange is going to be not exactly the same, right? The under center stuff. I think Nix played very few true dropbacks under center, which again, not his fault. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but just wasn't asked to. So that kind of changes the things there from that relationship and what that looks like with the footwork and the snap exchange. Monica coming in here. Good to see you, Monica. Says, Scott, I'm probably guilty of asking the same question to work third shift and miss a lot of these conversations, but thanks for repeating for us slackers. No slacking. Thank you for your third shift work. We appreciate you and hope you have hope you're having a good week. Keith Brugman coming in, always having a good week when we have Keith in here, says Broncos country should start falling in love with Spencer Rattler, in my opinion. It does seem like there is the NFL has pretty much talked about it. I'm happy to be a little early on that. Scott, I don't know if I think it was December 1st, and Broncos country was kind of infatuated with Jaden Daniels. I'm like, okay, Jaden Daniels, but start to familiarize yourself with JJ McCarthy. And the comments I got on there, Scott, you would not believe. You're an idiot. That's an undraftable player. How could you have you watched JJ McCarthy? I'm like, the tools, man. And what I'm hearing, people love the way he's wired and the youth and upside, and he's
what's
really underrated
wrong with
athlete.
JJ McCarthy that you see that says no, I don't want that?
It was kind of I think it's kind of a little bit the Matt Corral conversation where it's like, okay, well, he didn't have to do it. But that's more so situational in my opinion.
Yeah. So Matt Corral played on an 8-4 Ole Miss team.
Yeah. Yes.
The JJ McCarthy, again, what do you see? I don't see him enough. Okay, well, let's see more then.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the trepidations on there, but I want you to watch him and say, no, he can't throw. He can't make NFL throws. I disagree. So again, he's not big enough. Well, I think he is. Not a good enough athlete. I think he is there too. Inexperience. Okay, well, athlete. He's experienced as a starter running a game and winning games. That's a good thing. He hasn't thrown the ball a ton. Okay, well, let's have him throw it more. I mean, there's I can understand, there's guys I like better or whatnot, but I don't see any reason to say JJ McCarthy is an absolute no in the NFL. Physically speaking, from what he's done in college, I don't see a no there. I see a pretty damn good quarterback prospect.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting the other day, Lance Zierlein, who's been connected to the league for a long time, does a lot of good NFL draft work for NFL.com. You can check out his work. He has misses, of course, but as do we all in this industry. He was talking about he's never seen a quarterback with such a difference of perspective from where he hears the league is at versus where the media is at. There's a chance that McCarthy jumps May. I mean, heck, there's a chance that McCarthy ends up being the second quarterback off the board at this point. Point I was making, though, Scott, was there's a clear top 4 in terms of the quarterbacks from general consensus this draft cycle, with Williams being number 1 far and away. Then after that, tier 2 is probably, depending on who you ask, Daniels, May, and McCarthy. Then after that, there's a tier 3, which is Nix, Rattler, and Penix.
I'm old enough to remember when Caleb Williams was sliding because, character concerns and he wasn't good enough. Well, yeah. That smear campaign didn't work on Caleb Williams, so now they've moved on to Drake May. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see. Drake May's falling when I see him fall out of the top 5 Thursday, April 20-something.
And can you really be a faller if you fall from 2 to 6? I mean, that's a little slide, but that's the floor.
But right? I don't think he even falls to 6.
I don't either.
I think so. Again, Lawrence talking about, now that it is all said and done, would you rather have this trade with Russ or the Dak Prescott trade I mentioned a few months ago? So there wasn't a trade with Russ, or are you talking about beforehand? I mean, in hindsight, you'd rather have
anything but that.
Anything but the trade for Russell Wilson. I mean, anything.
Besides, maybe the Deshaun Watson trade. Maybe we don't want that one with the guarantee.
You know what we mean on this.
Yeah.
And frankly, you'd probably rather have Deshaun Watson too. Deshaun Watson would be a good quarterback in a Sean Payton system. Really good quarterback for Sean Payton.
Yep.
You're just tied to him financially longer, yet still find enough money to throw $20 million at Jerry Jeudy. So, Dak Prescott, or Dak Prescott's unavailable. He's just that's the point with that. They get a $60 million dead cap charge, $60 million in base salary. I mean, his number this year is crazy. The Dallas Cowboys have to find a way to get him a new contract this year, and they will. I firmly believe they will. Is Dak Prescott a better quarterback right now than Russell Wilson? Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that's an easy one, Lawrence.
Dak Prescott's probably one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Wasn't he the NFL MVP runner-up too, or one of the top 3?
Yeah, I think he was top 3. He might have been third. Who won it? Lamar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is fair.
And then second, did Purdy come in second?
I think Purdy came in.
Jalen Hurts fell off so bad it probably wasn't him. He was in the running a while ago. You see
I
how
think
important that award is to me. I don't even remember who finished second.
it was either that. I mean, I might have voted for
Purdy
Josh
was in it for
Allen.
a while, and then they were
Yeah.
talking about Myles Garrett or Watt actually being in the conversation for a while too.
Yeah. I think Josh Allen was in the conversation as well. I know he turns it over a lot, but he is an N of one in terms of how much he has to carry and the plays that he can make. He's modern day Brett Favre. I think, yeah, Josh Allen had to be up there too. So getting back to it here, talking about the quarterbacks, I was saying, keep an eye on Rattler. Yeah, where I'm at right now, if the Broncos came away day 2 with any of Nix, Penix, or Rattler, I'd be happy. And I don't think that any of them have super massive upside as a starter capable of going blow for blow against the Herberts and the Mahomeses of the world, but with a very good coaching staff and a well-built roster around them on a rookie contract, you might be able to be competitive there and give yourself a chance. I mean, the Broncos beat the Chiefs last year with this roster. They were 2-5 at the time when they did that, and Russell Wilson at quarterback. I mean, you can still compete against those teams. So there's a chance if you can do that with that rookie contract. But the issue for me is that they're very much tier 3. And I think that, honest to God, Scott, it's kind of like when I clump these guys, I'm not overconfident enough in my analysis where I can clump these guys. And when I have them clumped, you know what I like to do? Take the last guy available, because I don't feel so good about one over the other that give me the best value on that tier. And that's who I want to go with. So if Rattler's the last one, and that's assuming medical is clear, personality is clear, everything like that. But give me the last one available if that's a chance.
The discussions in here, and when people start picking their favorites, it really warps history. And these are some of my favorite conversations, Jess. Tim Tebow never got close to 48 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in a college season. Tebow couldn't hold Nix's jockstrap in college. Goodness. Tim Tebow is arguably the greatest college football player there ever was. When you start breaking Herschel Walker's records for rushing touchdowns, and his numbers weren't bad. In 2007, he threw for 3,300 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. In 2008, he had 2,750 yards, 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He finished a 3-year career with 83 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, while rushing for 57 touchdowns. Now, while that's significantly more, 15 more touchdowns and like a less interception is definitely good for Nix. Tim Tebow was a freaking monster, throwing, passing, running. And the thing about Tim Tebow is second and short was 2 free plays, because when he had the ball, they could get a first down whenever they wanted to. On and one, they could always get a first down. It was so dangerous. Second and 1, free play. Third and 1, free play. Fourth and 1, conversion. That Tim Tebow was an amazing college football player, and I had to root against him for a long time back then. He was freaking good in college. Now, I lost a steak dinner because I said there's absolutely no way he's a first-round quarterback. I had that discussion with my friend, and Josh Daniels made me out to be wrong, which I didn't appreciate. So it only takes one team. We say that all the time. It only takes one team. But as a college football player, Tim Tebow was he was better than Bo Nix across the course of his career, for goodness sake.
Yeah, not much of a conversation there. I mean, if Tebow would have played football 50 years prior, he might have been one of the best ever, right? And when it was much more of that, the leather helmet days. But bringing it back here, we'll see what happens with the quarterback groups. And Scott, also, I think it's very possible, we talk about these clear delineations of these groups. That's going to vary by teams. Some teams are going to have, I would not be shocked at all if some teams had Bo Nix higher than Jaden Daniels, just because the style of play and the fact that Daniels didn't really have to go through progressions too often. He'd hit that back foot and, hey, I'm a really good runner. Take off. The frame, the age factor for Daniels too. And also Daniels was playing on a superstar offense. I mean, we talk about Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors there, but they have 2 future top 50 picks at offensive tackle as well. I mean, their left tackle might be the first offensive tackle off the board in the 2025 draft. So A lot of talent there. On the fact that they had that much talent and didn't make the playoffs is just unbelievable. Their defense was, it was just an absolute eyesore. But I
Here,
wouldn't be
let's go
shocked at
through
all.
this again. Since at the top, rated as one of the worst rosters. I said we were going to do this. I
Let's do it.
want to run through, and we'll go through negative. Talking about, we'll use the baseball stat of WAR, wins against replacement. So how worthy are you against an average NFL player? Negative, neutral, positive, and we'll run through the starters on here. And they include fullbacks, and it's like 13 starters. Cortland Sutton.
I'd say a slight positive.
There's no slights or anything, just positive, negative. We'll go through fast. Neutral,
Dang it.
negative, positive.
Positive.
Cortland Sutton, I agree with you. Positive. Tim Patrick.
Negative.
Marvin Mims.
Negative for now.
Yep, negative wide receiver. Yep. I mean, he hasn't played much wide receiver. Garrett Bowles.
Positive.
And I'm neutral on that one. Ben Powers.
Neutral.
Neutral. Luke Wattenberg.
Negative.
Negative. Quinn Miners.
Positive.
Agree. I'll only say anything if I disagree. If I have a different score. Mike McGlinchey.
Neutral.
Adam Troutman.
There's so few difference makers at tight ends that it's hard for me to say truly negative for him, because he does bring some blocking aspect to him as well as a two-way tight end. And again, it's just like there's like 5 difference makers at tight end in the NFL. I'll go negative because of what the market says, but I think it's okay to be. It's okay. There's like 5 difference makers, and the rest is just adequate. So he's negative, but I think it's not a huge deal.
Negative.
Yeah.
Jarrett Stidham.
Negative.
Negative. Javonte Williams.
Negative.
I go neutral right now. Neutral with a trending positive, where I expect it to be positive this year.
I hope so. His vision, Scott, it's just so bad. Like, it's how many, like, going back, nothing frustrated me more last year. The offensive line was one of the probably 7 best run blocking units in football, and they ended up being one of the 15, 16 best teams. And it's like, I heard somebody talking the other day, is like, Javonte Williams was running against stacked boxes. No, he was not. He was I think 20th or something in stacked boxes. He was just missing holes. So I don't know. Sorry, I'm hoping for the best for Williams, but man, he looked bad last season. So we'll see.
DL, Malcolm Roach.
Negative.
DJ Jones.
Neutral.
I'm neutral on a 2-year sample size. I think you went positive, negative, neutral, and they cancel each other out and go neutral. Zach Allen.
Positive.
Baron Browning.
Neutral.
I think he's a positive. I think he's a positive. Cody Barton.
Negative for now. Yep.
Yeah, negative-ish. Alex Singleton.
Neutral.
Jonathan Cooper.
Neutral. I have a hard time with the edges because you need difference makers there, and those guys are so far.
They're basically average, and you've got value on that. If I could get 4 day 3 picks to play like Jonathan Cooper, I'd be pretty friggin' happy. That's for sure. But I don't need day 3 picks on my defensive line. I need difference makers at edge. Damari Mathis.
Negative.
Caden Stearns.
Negative.
Brandon Jones.
Neutral.
Pat Surtain.
Positive.
Jaquan McMillian.
Oh, man, I think we'll go positive, but I worry about the overall sample size there.
He's listed as a nickel. I'll go positive there too.
I'll go positive.
So again, are you talking about, is this one of the bottom 5 rosters in the NFL? I think on the defensive side of the ball, I think that's a definite. Now,
especially because we didn't get into the depth there, Scott, and how important is depth on that defensive line and the cornerback group. You didn't mention, I think Benito also is a positive for his role. But you get into the depth of the secondary, the depth of the defensive line, it doesn't exist. So that is a major issue. And when you really feel the squeeze of that dead cap, it's on those positions where you need waves of guys.
Yeah, especially the interior DL. Those 6 players are Malcolm Roach, DJ Jones, Zach Allen, Matt Henningsen, Rashard Lawrence, and Elijah Garcia.
Yeah, that's not great. And you have like a bunch of second string caliber edge rushers as well. So it's defense is definitely not very good. And as Mike Clay has it, The Broncos with the 28th ranked defense, not the 29th, but 28th. Granted, the Broncos have the second worst quarterback ranking in the NFL, and that makes up 20% of your overall grade on this. But defensive line, he actually ranks the Broncos defensive line as a 2.0, Scott, which I'm going to have to disagree with him. He has that as the third highest graded unit on the Broncos. Edge rusher 1.0, though, linebacker 1.1, safety 0.4, one of the one of the third worst safety group in the NFL. But I guess I agree that the defense is not very good. To rank them as the second best unit on the defense, I guess you have Allen and DJ Jones there as known quantities, but the depth is pretty damn putrid.
So when we're talking about some good comments coming in here still, want to hit on a few of those now. Danny Powers over on Facebook says, hear me out. If we went with Brock Bowers in the first, and that's who Daniel Jeremiah had the Broncos taking. And the funny thing to me was, he goes, I know it's not a big need for the Broncos. Yes, it is. It absolutely is a need for the Broncos. Until Greg Dulcich proves he can play more than one game in a row. I'm on a winning streak. Let me start over. Out if we went with Bowers in the first and Rattler in the third, I consider them being the new Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes for the Broncos. That's a big step. Rattler was being talked about as a first-round guy after his freshman season. He has rehabilitated his image, and if you can get him in the third or even trade up and get a late second, you're getting good value there. I think Bo Nix is good value in the second round too. I don't necessarily think he's good value at 12, not in the draft. Now, hindsight may change everything. Brock Purdy would be a first-round draft pick if it went all over again. But obviously, no one thought he was worthy of a first-round draft pick before. We're not hindsight grading here. Going in and what happens, can these guys play and become something? Yes, and I think, Danny, Brock Bowers has a better chance of being Travis Kelce than Spencer Rattler has of being Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. I think my comp for Rattler is Baker Mayfield, because there is he's a good arm, not an incredible athlete, kind of smaller, stockier. And there's some throws where it's like, God, what were you thinking there? What did you see? And then they get it done. But I think that's my comp for Rattler. We'll see how it plays out, though. Coach Chris coming back in says, I think we trade back around 18-19 and get a second round pick and still get Bo Nix. Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. Heck, Coach, I might be greedy enough and be okay living in a world where somebody else takes Nix before you that I might even trade down again from 18 to 19 and see if he's still there. Can I get down to 28? That's from that spot. Can I get some 2025 draft capital by doing that to give myself some flexibility? It says depends if a tight end from Georgia's available. Could see Sean eyeing a quarterback in the next draft. Can Nix get late first or Rattler in the second? Penix also in the mix there with those guys talking about that tier 3 of quarterbacks. All very possible for the Broncos at this point. A lot of Brock Bowers talk. It makes sense. I'm glad to hear that some of the Brock Bowers talk. I think that if you trade back to 18 and 19, there's a lot of options still available for you there. Edge rusher and cornerback become very possible. And we talked about how bad this defense is. I really want to build the offense, Scott, but you need good players at value positions, and cornerback and edge are there. So Latu, Chop Robinson, Kenyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and Terrion Arnold. I mean, all those guys you're talking about trading back to 18 to 19 start to make sense. Maybe even a center. You talk about Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton there as well. It's starting to be in that range. So definitely options available if you trade back. There's a name, Scott, I hadn't really heard to the Broncos too much at 12, but I saw it yesterday, and there was a little bit of at least intrigue at this spot for me. Somebody who has not been talked about as one of the big 3 wide receivers, but given what the wide receiver market's doing right now, and given this player's upside, what do you think about how much would you prickle up if I told you Brian Thomas is an option at 12?
Oh, LSU wide receiver?
Yes, he's only played football for 4 years. He is huge. He ran one of the fastest 40s of all time for his size, and he was one of the most explosive players in football as well.
I would probably have a very similar to reaction that I did in 2021 when the Atlanta Falcons took Kyle Pitts. Okay. It's just this isn't the right time to be using that high a pick. And again, they had there was a quarterback on the board with Justin Fields. Now, whether or not he ends up being anything at all, that looks like it could have been a wasted pick too. But I don't know that you're in shape to take advantage of a high round pass catcher right now when you don't know your quarterback situation for what could be a couple of years if you don't get one this year. Because 2025 doesn't look a whole hell of a lot better.
Yeah. I think it's taken advantage of the way the board sets up in that situation, as well as the cost benefit. We just talked about wide receiver cost benefit. Now I agree with you. You're not hitting the ground running as much with that, but you'd have him for I mean, wide receivers are getting their 5th year options picked up. Even Jerry Jeudy, we talked about it. Nobody's getting their 5th year option picked up. Jeudy is, and he's been not great.
Because they double. That was half.
Yeah.
That was half the market. His 5th year option was 13, and then he gets 20.
So,
so his 5th year option was still a bargain for wide receivers.
And that's one reason I think somebody like a Brian Thomas might be somebody we haven't talked about so much here. I wouldn't be shocked. I also wouldn't be shocked if Brian Thomas gets picked before Brock Bowers also. So we'll see what happens with that. A lot of Brock Bowers to Jets conversation at this point, given what they've done. Personally, if I was the Jets, I probably would be taking an offensive lineman because do they trust Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith to keep Aaron Rodgers upright at this point in their careers? I wouldn't. I probably think I could find a tight end elsewhere still, and I'd rather raise the floor of the offense by adding another offensive lineman than assume everybody's going to stay healthy. But that's just me. I'd like to prepare for the worst. Darren Nelson comes in.
Darren Nelson coming in with some stars over on Facebook. He says, we seem to talk about value being more important than finding the right guy. Ooh. If Nix was selected at 12 and became a 10-year steady starter, what more value do you want? The problem is the right guy and a 10-year starter is hindsight grading. And we don't have that ability to do that. If I had the ability to do that, why wouldn't I take Brock Purdy in the 7th? Why wouldn't I take Tom Brady in the 6th? All these hindsight gradings with small sample sizes. You stack your board on where you rank guys, the value you place on them as prospects based on their traits, based on everything you look at, and then you put them in order. Based on this class, when you put these guys in order, Bo Nix doesn't come in at 12 for just about everybody. For just about everybody that you look anywhere around any big board out there, listen to us, don't listen to us. There isn't any place on earth where you will find Bo Nix in the top 12 of picks. Is he close to that? And how close? Because I've seen him anywhere from 20 to 45. It's probability. And based on the traits, based on where you are looking at a guy, you are not as probable of getting the 12th best player, getting your 10-year guy because of the evaluation you put into him. If you get all of these things that you're talking about, he's worth a number 1 overall. But you don't have the benefit of grading with hindsight.
Yeah, it's all about probability and projectability. And if he goes on to be a Pro Bowl starter, yeah, he'll be worth the 12th pick. But we don't know that right now. All you can go on is what you see and the tangibles.
A WAR above average. If we can put positive next to his name. Of course, if you finish 10 to 14, you're probably in the Pro Bowl at some point.
Like let's say he goes up to become like Jared Goff, caliber quarterback at 12 overall, especially on a rookie contract. Oh my goodness.
No doubt. Andy Dalton would have been worth a first-round draft pick.
Maybe not 12, but that's back into the first for sure. That's kind of the conversation there for me. Dalton, as soon as he was paid, that value shrank up.
Right, but we're talking rookie contracts, et cetera, et cetera. And again, with the benefit of hindsight, abso-freaking-lutely. If I could get a 10-year starter, he's worth 2 first-round draft picks. Yeah. Are you trading 2 first-round draft picks for Bo Nix? No. Would you like to hedge your bets a little bit and trade back, pick up a 2nd rounder, and get Bo Nix? Yes. Yes, I would. I would absolutely. What's the perfect draft for you, Scott? I'm glad you asked. Moving back, getting Bo Nix a little bit later and picking up another day 2 pick. That would be spectacular. I would love to see that for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. So thanks for the comment, Darren. In the end, the best you can do about the draft board is try to maximize value. It is a value proposition at the end of the day. And there are some positions and traits and players and skill sets that if you don't take them early, you're not going to find them. You go through the best, highest paid offensive tackles, edge rushers, interior defensive linemen, top 30, top 40 picks across the board. So you're trying to find the value because you need those kind of guys. If you're not using first round picks on them, good luck. You're pretty improbable. So it does matter. That's why the metrics and the analytics come in. For the
I want to hit
Broncos.
Riptide on a
Yeah,
bunch
let's
of
do it.
these. He's come in rapid fire on these, Riptide. Thank you so much. When we were talking about the roster ratings, he says, not worried about our roster ratings in March. What was Houston's roster rating in March of 2023? Probably not as good in 2023. But then by May of 2023, they had 4 top 15 and 3 top 5 picks on their roster. And they all hit. they all hit. That's a big one, including CJ Stroud playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level as a rookie, which is, we talk about value, highly improbable. If you grade with hindsight, CJ Stroud comes off number 1, no questions asked, without a doubt. He went number 2, and they paid 3 times as much to get Bryce Young. So if you can get a Bryce Young, or apologies, if you can get a CJ Stroud performance out of your quarterback and a Will Anderson performance from your 3rd round pick, and let's see who they take. They took 2 guys the year before that.
Derek Stingley
to go opposite Pat Surtain.
Somebody else too. I cannot recall.
I think it was an offensive lineman. They took it like 15.
Oh yeah, he's not been very good. Kenyon Green.
Yeah, between 12 and 13.
Yeah,
but
Kenyon Green.
The 3 picks they had in the top 5 have been big time hits. So they were bringing a little bit more to the plate. I saw this in here about grading coaching staffs. Y'all know how I feel about Sean Payton. I don't have to play golf with the guy, but I think he's a hell of a football coach. Positive. I think he is one of the top coaches in this league. Felt that for a long time.
My issue with the Texans comparison here, Scott, is that yes, they were perceived as a poor roster, and I think that's Riptide's overall point. But you mentioned it, the amount of rare skill sets and body types that they were allowed to add with the picks. They were sitting there at number 2 overall. I think if the Broncos are sitting there at number 2 overall this year, it's a question of who, not if, for the quarterback spot. And better year than last year perceived. I mean, Stroud was incredible. Richardson, I'm still a huge Richardson fan. We'll see if he can stay healthy. But really interesting to follow that. But the Texans had unbelievable amount of cap space. They had a war chest of draft picks. I mean, they traded up multiple firsts to go get Will Anderson, who's probably the best defensive prospect in the last 5 years. Micah Parsons is better, but as far as a prospect goes, prospect doing the heavy lifting there, probably the best defensive prospect since Chase Young. And then also you had, again, sitting number 2 overall, a lot of cap space and the war chest of picks. And also you're not in the AFC West where you got Herbert and Mahomes to go against. So
this is closer to taking the 2021 Atlanta Falcons.
Yes, that is. Yes.
To the AFC West. They won 7 games, which wasn't great. This roster is still better, I believe, than what the Falcons had in 2021, maybe. Where I figured there was only 4 NFL guys on the team.
I think the roster is pretty close, but the coaching is the big difference for me on where they're at.
Arthur Smith did what he needed to do for that team to eke out 7 wins 2 years in a row, and then seemed like that was his ceiling. So, the top 4 picks could be quarterbacks, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Chargers. And again, if all 4 quarterbacks go in the top 5 or 6, somebody's fallen. It definitely means somebody's fallen from that point of view, which will give you, if you're still sitting there at 12, it'll give you a choice. There's going to be a premium player there at 12. And again, back to value, you may have Bo Nix up in the top 15 on your board. Every board's different. What we're looking at, we wouldn't have him up there, and I haven't seen many people that do. That gives you a really good trade down opportunity. But again, if you like him, you don't trade down. You don't risk it. If you like Bo Nix, you take him at 12. There's no questions asked. You don't risk it. It's like, oh, we really like Bo Nix, but we thought we could do better. You just screwed yourself at the game's most important position. Before, and I'm not saying you could still be in a bunch of trouble if you take a guy and he can't play, but you never even gave yourself a chance. If you trade out of a spot and don't get the guy you want, you never even gave yourself the chance.
Yeah. As far as Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Chargers, I think if Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to 5, Chargers might be more interested in a trade back. Honest to God, I don't know if Harbaugh is going to value that wide receiver position as much And as we kind of saw last year with the Cardinals, teams will be willing to move up for a premium position, no doubt player. And I would be looking hard at the Bears. I would be looking hard at just a number of teams. I think the Chargers could get not a quarterback level trade back package, but an unbelievable one there. And they could still move back and get themselves one of the best offensive tackles or Brock Bowers in the draft or cornerback or something like that, defensive line as well. So I think that, Marvin Harrison Jr. there at 5 would be interesting. Do the Chargers value the wide receiver position there enough that they would not take a trade back? Because I think somebody would be on the phone with them to go move up for Marvin Harrison Jr. And from everything we've heard, Chargers are very interested in moving back if possible.
And I think there was a report today that came out that said the Arizona Cardinals are open for business. So we're not going to put up a neon. So we're going to put up a neon sign. I don't want it blinking because I don't like the blinking. So, I thought Colt Rambler says, so who's going to be our quarterback this year? I think your day one starter is going to be Jarrett Stidham.
I think in terms of probability right now, number one, far and away, because he's here, is Jarrett Stidham. I think the next most possible option is probably Ryan Tannehill right now, just because I think it's a little bit less improbable than the assortment of rookie quarterbacks and the fact that Tannehill would probably start out of the gate versus one of the tier 3 rookie quarterbacks in this draft class. So I think he'd be number 2, but far and away having heavy betting favorites would have to be Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, and I'd go rookie next if I'm betting. Rookie quarterback would be my next choice on this. I see no reason to go Ryan Tannehill on that.
Yep.
David Youngkin, good to see you, David. Hope you're doing well. He says, was Chase Young supposed to be the next Aaron Darnold? I'd probably go Myles Garrett on something like that. Myles is a little bit older, but he'd already established himself interior versus exterior as far as an edge versus a defensive tackle. Aaron Donald was really good, but different positions on that. As far as game records, though, I'd say Myles Garrett, they couldn't have been more than 3 years apart, Nick.
Garrett would have come out in the 2017 draft class, and Chase Young would have been in the 2019 draft class, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and Garrett was already an all-pro after 2018, had 13 and a half sacks, so that's kind of what you were hoping to get, and I don't think the Bosas are quite that age. There just haven't been those edges since, it seems like, in a couple of years. Yes, I know Micah Parsons, but he wasn't an edge. That was one of the discussions on there.
Will Anderson.
Riptide killing it today. I don't even know what we go after the golden sombrero, the platinum hat here. He says Sean Payton is a top 8 active coach. Tired of the Breeze made him narrative fans are spitting. Breeze was 30-29 in San Diego, fighting for his job against Doug Flutie for 3 years before Sean Payton. Yeah, again, the discussions become so binary. I think Drew Brees was a good quarterback and a really good quarterback prospect before he went to New Orleans. That can be true. And I think he was outstanding in New Orleans and a Hall of Famer in New Orleans. That can also be true. So, again, I think Drew Brees was a good quarterback. I think he got into a great situation with a great coach, and they made music together. Again, you type in New Orleans Saints reference and go to their history and I've told y'all to do this before. Just look at what the Saints were before Sean Payton. Mm-hmm. They were a travesty. One of the bottom 2 or 3, along with the Buccaneers and the Falcons and the Detroit Lions. 3, 4, 5 worst franchises in the NFL for their history of their league. So there we go on that. We're running out of time here, so we got our closers coming in. DWI guy says, great show, gents, in Broncos country. When are we going to talk linebackers? As soon as the chat stops, Tarkin, Bo Nix. God, good gracious. There's an agenda going on in there. Yes.
It's a culture war.
There's going to be differing opinions on all these quarterbacks.
And the thing is,
in the chat, I've had to go to the different column because I can't read the chat anymore. My Facebook guys over here are having a better conversation.
Great show, gents. Thank you so much, Ethan. As far as linebackers, not a great linebacker class. I really like Junior Colson. If he's there, pick 76. If any of the top 3 linebackers there at pick 76, we can have a conversation. In my opinion, that would be Junior Colson, Michigan, Edgerrin Cooper, Texas A&M, and Peyton Wilson, NC State, who had a really good combine but had a lot of injuries. Sure, that makes sense. It does seem like the Broncos are probably going cheap at the position this season, kind of like they're going probably cheap at center as well. With the dead cap, you're going to have to go cheap somewhere and pinch some pennies. It's going to be a Cody Barton versus Jonas Griffith versus question mark Drew Sanders opposite Alex Singleton. You're going to hope that your pro scouts did a good job there and the coaches can develop somebody to become a competent starter.
Yeah, talking linebackers, DWI guys, Nick and I have hit on, and it makes sense. You're better off, even if you use a day 2 pick on a guy, you're almost better off just going the veteran free agent market on inside linebackers. You can get value. Again, there's that word, value. I can get really good veterans for $2 to $3 million. A second round pick in the 4th year of his contract is almost $4 million at inside linebacker. So, playing the free agent game at linebacker makes a linebacker and running back, and now safety. I saw a comment from Danny on Facebook saying it's a shame that Justin Simmons hasn't been signed yet. There's a ton of safeties still available. The running back, inside linebacker, and safeties. It's becoming really, really hard to use premium picks on those guys when they can be had for cheap on the open market, and you have a better idea of what you're getting.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And we got to wrap it on up here because I got to get up to the baby duty here. Opinion on Chop Robinson and trade back? Yeah, he's a freak athlete. Had probably the best 3-cone. His 10-yard split for edge was phenomenal. He's a little bit similar to Nick Bonito as far as a one-trick pony, as like a wide rusher who has questions at setting the edge. But he is a more twitched up, explosive, speed to power version of Bonito. And if there is one area where you can't have enough of, it's rushers who can get after the bleeping quarterback. So especially with the simulated pressure stuff you're seeing today, you can get one-on-ones schemed up in past situations. So I think if you traded back to 20 to 30 and you loved Chop or Leatu Latu, sign me up. Latu may be a little higher because he tested pretty well, and it's always been the medicals for me with Latu. I don't think he's Verse or Turner, but he's that next guy there. So Chop is 4, and I think there's a big drop after Chop Robinson to the next edge.
2 questions, then I'm going to rapid fire real quick, and then Nick's going to get us out of here. Gabe Ingvold says, if we traded back into the 20s, would you guys rather have a 2nd and a 5th this year or a 1st in 2025? Depends with who. Depends with who I'm trading with. A 2nd this year, if I think it's in the 40s, and a 5th, I might go that direction, and then rather have a 1st that might be between 25 and 32.
I'm taking the 1st every time because the value difference, the potential value difference of the 1st is so big. I mean, I saw the chat talking earlier. The difference between pick 22 and 12 was like the value of another pick 22 overall. And that 2nd, it's just not nearly going to have the potential, especially if you're still hunting for quarterbacks. So give me that 1st every time because the value difference there is worth the, I guess the dice roll. It's not really a dice roll, but like just how much value you can actually click. If that ends up being a top 10, top 5 pick, unbelievable difference for your franchise. So give me the 1st.
I won't say every time, just because again, if it's a 2nd this year and it's in the 35 to 40 range, or I'm trading with Buffalo and they want to send me a 1st, I might want to go this year, depending on what I've gotten already, because there's some guys that are going to be 35 to 40 that are 1st round guys, I believe. Yep. So you can go on there. And then last one real quick. String Guy had a question. Any 1st round linebackers in this draft? I don't think so. I don't think there's any linebackers. And I don't know that I would use a 1st round pick on an inside linebacker ever again at this point.
Yeah. Keep an eye out for Peyton Wilson. I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up going with one of the last 5 picks in the 1st round because the athleticism and the statistical profile is pretty high, but the hit rate on linebacker is horrific. So there's a lot of risk there. We got to fly, guys. I'm supposed to get out of here at 7:30. So appreciate everyone. Hope you're having a good one. Have a great week. Make sure you guys are following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I am at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle if you haven't done so yet. Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe, like, and share on your social medias. A lot of super chats today. Coach Chris, Coach Mark Schrader, Lawrence Rivera, Gil Billy, appreciate you. Riptide a few times. Jess Canady, Darren Nelson coming in. Riptide a bunch. Quentin Caldwell. Love you, Quentin Caldwell. And DWI, guys. You guys are great. Scott and I got to fly. Appreciate everyone. We'll see you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. It's draft season, baby. Go Broncos.